back when I was about 11 or 12 years old, there was a well-known wrestler in the Detroit area who was referred to as Killer Kowalski. My sixth grade teacher's name was Mrs. Kowalski. She was tough. She was strict. At times we thought she was mean. And so we started a rumor that she was the wife of Killer Kowalski. We spread stories around the school that she liked that lifestyle. And that's what made her so rough and tough in the classroom. One day in the classroom, the intercom crackled to life. And she was called to the office. And on her way out, she put a responsible student in charge. At least she thought that student was responsible. While she was gone, a boy pulled the pigtails of a girl ahead of him. And that girl ran up to the desk telling on him. And I remember well, that student at the desk started waving his pencil at the girl and accidentally poked her in the eye. That's when it all let loose. Tattletelling, noise, throwing papers around the room. What the student at the desk had noticed that girl wasn't telling, that a whole bunch of the rest of us noticed, is that when that boy pulled that girl's pigtails, she took a pencil and rammed it into his knee. And so he yelled out. Well, as it was all let loose, as things were going on in that classroom, in noise and telling everything, and it happened, then it happened. The door opened. And Mrs. Kowalski opened the door unexpectedly and came back into the classroom. We were in trouble. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I do remember the whole class having to stay after school for some detention. I remember some students talking about parents being called. I think in particular the boy who did the pigtails and the girl who ran the pencil and the boy at the desk who poked the girl in the eye with the pencil. It was not a good scene. Coming unexpectedly. I look over at Mark chapter 13, and we find these words, about verse 32. No one knows about the day or the hour, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Be on guard, be alert. You do not know when the Son of Man is going to return to this earth. As we look at these scriptures this morning, we are looking at Jesus warning his disciples about end-time calamities. Be prepared. You never know when Jesus is going to return again. The storyline here in the scripture talks about a man going on a journey. He must be a rather wealthy man because when he leaves, he gives his servants assignments. Now, I don't know about you. We don't have any servants. If we go away, the last thing I do after everything is in the car, and even after Marcy is out in the car, I go through and I make sure the patio door is locked, I make sure the front door is locked, and I make sure the deadbolt is locked, because at our house, things shift, and if that deadbolt isn't locked on the front door, we'll go home and that door will be popped open. And then I go and make sure that windows are locked. I make sure that the door that comes into the utility room is locked, and then I go out and I make sure the garage door closes, and every once in a while I disable the thing so you can't open it up with a remote door opener. And that then you have to go in through the regular door with a key. Just all those safeguards. But this guy was rich. He didn't have to go through all that. The story tells us when he left, he told his servant, the main servant, the doorman, to keep watch because I don't know when I'm going to return and I want to be let in my house. Now, is there anybody here who takes off from your house and doesn't take your keys with you and you're locked out? You've done that?
Several.
How many other people have done that? I admit it, I have too. It's a bad feeling. You come home and you can't get in. No one is there to let you in the house. This guy said, I don't know when I'm coming. Be ready. Be alert. Be on guard. Now, this guy that he left there was the guy who was in charge of making sure everything was taken care of and clean. Now, we don't clean our house every day. Does anybody else clean their house every day? I didn't think so. We'll go through and pick up and run the vacuum cleaner, but you know when we really do the major cleaning? Huh? Yeah, like before Thanksgiving Day, yeah. But 10 minutes before company's coming, you go through and pick everything up, throw everything in the closet, you run the vacuum cleaner so it looks good, and those people go, my, don't they live nice and neat? This guy wanted his house ready. He wanted immaculately walked in. He wanted food on the table. He wanted someone there that when they saw him coming to open the door and say, it is so good to have you back home again. Everything is ready for you. And so the words there, verses 35 and 36 are, keep watch, because you don't know when the owner of the house will come, whether in the evening or at midnight or when the rooster crows or at dawn. Be ready to open the door when he comes suddenly. Now, from my 6th grade story, there's another thought there. Behave. Behave. So when the person in charge comes back, you don't get in trouble. What a spiritual application there. Behave. So when God returns, when Jesus returns, we're ready to go home with Him. Because we don't know when it's going to happen. Today's the first Sunday of Advent. If you're expecting some cute message about the coming of birth of Jesus, forget it. Because here's the straightforward message. Jesus came and He's coming again unexpectedly. Mrs. Kowalski never told us when she'd be back. She just showed up, and we were not prepared. Be alert. You do not know when the time comes. Well, what does this say to me? We as God's people have the responsibility to be the door watchers and to share the story of Christmas, the gospel story, with the world. Jesus told His early disciples that He was going away and that He's putting them in charge of making sure that people knew why He came. That's our job, folks. Our job is to be His witnesses in the world around us. And we don't have to go around shaking our finger in people's faces. We just need to live a strong Christian, good, healthy, moral life that says to people around the world that there's something different about this Christianity thing. That Jesus Christ came to make a difference, and He's made a difference in these lives. And what is it all about? And He can make a difference in my life too. We want people to say that, and that's one of our jobs. That's part of the story of Advent. That's part of the thing, is to give hope to a world that's living in darkness. Hope that there's something better out there for them. I've run into all kinds of hopeless people here just in the last few days, in the last week. They're worried about health issues and financial issues and living issues and all kinds of stuff. And it's like they're being crushed by all kinds of things with no hope, nothing for the future. And if we could just point people to the fact that Jesus Christ can make a difference in our lives, in our daily life, it would change the whole venue of people's lives by knowing that somewhere, somehow, God's going to work things out for them, not just in the end taking them to heaven, but every day here on earth, He will take care of them, no matter what's happening. Hope for the future. Accompanying this thought is the deep desire to hear God speak to us, to intervene in our personal lives, to come close to us day after day after day, showing His power and His glory to each and every one of us. Now, I've had that thought in my mind that we have to keep one eye on the future and the other eye right here on our daily lives. Because if I goof up today, I may not have that future with God. If I turn my back on God and just walk away from Him, I may not have that future. And so I have to allow God to help me on a daily basis live for Him. Keep walking that road that's going to get me to heaven. And I've got to keep that future thought there in mind. But while I'm here, I've got to work to take as many people as I can with me. I had this thought that it's kind of like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. I had to really think to do that. I started to rub my head, and I thought, oh, I'll mess my beautiful hair up. Yeah. How many can do that? How many can pat your head and rub your stomach? You all look so goofy doing that. While we're keeping one eye on the future, we have to do those things required to keep the household running while the master's away. Because when the master comes back, he wants to find it clean. So I've had this thought on our walk to Bethlehem. It becomes with a vision of the end. Be prepared. There's hope. Verse 31 of Mark 13 says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. I watched some of the tragedies this last week that's going on in the world around us. We know people in Alaska know people that have good friends in Alaska, and people that have been up there, and that earthquake was just horrendous, and all the stories, and it's almost like their world has ended around them. I was thinking of the people in Taylorville, Illinois last night as the news came across about that horrible tornado that came through there and tore that town in December. A tornado in December of all times, and just tearing things apart. And I had the thought about this verse 31. Earth is in trouble. Earth's going to pass away. Earth is a mess. Fires in California and earthquakes in Alaska and tornadoes in Illinois in December. And it just keeps resounding through my head. Heaven and earth will pass away, but the only thing that's going to last is Jesus Christ, is our experience with Jesus Christ, is His words and His promise for the future that brings hope. No matter what happens when my end comes, I can go to heaven. I can go to heaven. Hope. We lit the first Advent candle today, the candle of hope. The dictionary says hope is the emotional state which promotes the belief in a positive outcome related to events and circumstances in one's life. Has anybody traveled through Pennsylvania and gone through that mile-long tunnel? Yes. Kind of scary, isn't it? Yeah. I know I've shared this before. As we went through there, traffic was going about 50 miles an hour, and every other light was on. Fluorescent lights up on the ceiling. And we were going through there, it was like those lights were flashing. And I thought I was going to go into a seizure or something from those lights. And about the time I was feeling like I was going to panic, I saw this little tiny light down there. And as we kept driving, that little tiny light got bigger and bigger, and I realized, you know what it was? The light at the end of the tunnel. Now that thing's only a mile long, and if you're going 60 miles an hour, in 1 minute you're going to be out of there. At 50 miles an hour, a little bit more a minute, but that minute seems to go like an eternity. Have you ever noticed how our lives get to where we get in trouble and we feel like we just can't handle it anymore? And we're just about ready to panic, and then we realize there's hope. God will come and remind us of His love and His care for us. God will come and answer some prayer in some miraculous way, and all of a sudden we see that little light at the end of the tunnel. And it reminds us that if I keep walking the way I'm walking, that light's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'll get out of this trouble that I'm in because God has the answers, and He's going to carry me through, and He gives me the hope to keep going on through. I saw a sign not too long ago that said, due to the economic turn downs, the light of the end of the tunnel has been turned off. Well, it's too bad that a lot of people are living as though they believe that. Hope is strange. There's lots of pain and suffering out there. But I'm reminded when someone's hurting and we pray and God answers that prayer, that God can and will heal all the hurts. Where's our hope? Our hope's in the gentle King. Jesus could have gone to Jerusalem with an army, but he chose to go publicly and face the dangers and what was waiting. If you read previous to this story in the Bible, you find Jesus talking about the end of the age. You find him talking about the greatest commandments. You find him very aware of what's going on in the world around him. You find the disciples warning him, don't go to Jerusalem, they're after you. But he publicly went there. He publicly did what he had to do so that we could be reminded of his love. We live in a world where full of tensions, and yet we're reminded to be bearers of that hope, bearers of that peace, bearers of that love. And when we're broken, I remind you to pray. I've had several people this week, and I do it myself. What am I going to do about this situation? And I keep reminding myself, the first thing to do when there's a situation is pray. Lord, give me wisdom. Lord, take care of the situation. Lord, show me what to do to get through this. Lord, do some miraculous thing just to change it. If we would keep doing that, we'd be so much better off. We need to be reminded to pray and to allow God to transform us in all of our relationships. We were talking in Sunday school this morning about Gideon, about how God had promised him to give the Midianite army to his hands. How God had told him that in a promise that he would be the victor. And yet through that thing, he kept doubting. He kept saying, Lord, are you sure? Lord, give me signs. And every time God was patient with him and gave him a sign that it was already promised. It was already done. You see, God has given us a whole bunch of promises. Promises for the future. Promises for a great life with him. Promises that we can continue on in him. And that's hope. And what we need to remember is, it's already done. All we have to do is let it work. That is hope. That is hope for the future. There's days when we feel like it's all over. But we need to be reminded that our trust in God, our needs will be met. We're going to sing We Three Kings in just a moment, just because it's a Christmas song. I was thinking about the story of the shepherds going to see the baby Jesus. I was thinking about the story of those three kings. Why would those guys pack up and take that trip? What were they thinking? I mean, they were going through deserts, and we think about this nice little cute Christmas story. Here's these three guys traveling across the desert with all these gifts to take to Jesus the King. But do you realize that they were traveling through some pretty rough territory? Do you realize that it wasn't just those three kings going? They had a whole big, huge group of people with them for protection. They were men. They had to have someone to cook for them. I mean, just face it, They had to have servants to haul their stuff. They had to have people to make sure their camels and they had quite a group of people traveling there. What caused those guys to do that? Hope. Hope because they saw a star, because they realized that something had been promised, and this was it, and they had hope for the future, and they wanted to be a part of it. As we sing that Three Kings this morning, just use that as a reminder that there is hope. And when you leave here today, go out prepared to enjoy that hope, but also to share that hope with everybody you come in contact with. There's an answer for the future because Jesus Christ is alive and He's well.